The case of Jeff Pelo, a respected police sergeant turned serial stalker and rapist, is a chilling reminder of how those entrusted with enforcing the law can sometimes exploit their position of power for sinister purposes. Pelo, a decorated officer from Bloomington, Illinois, shocked his community when he was arrested in 2006 and ultimately convicted for crimes that included stalking, burglary, and rape. Born in 1964, Pelo joined the Bloomington Police Department in the late 1980s and quickly rose through the ranks due to his dedication and professionalism. By the early 2000s, he was a sergeant with an impressive record, well-liked by his colleagues, and respected in the community. Pelo was also a married father of two, living what appeared to be a normal suburban life. However, beneath the surface, Jeff Pelo was living a double life. By day, he was a law enforcement officer who pledged to uphold the law. By night, he was a predator who stalked women, meticulously planned break-ins, and sexually assaulted his victims. This duality would make his eventual unmasking all the more shocking. Beginning in 2002, Bloomington and neighboring Normal, Illinois, were plagued by a series of chilling crimes. Women reported waking up in the middle of the night to find a man inside their homes. In several cases, the intruder sexually assaulted his victims before fleeing. The attacker seemed to have an uncanny ability to break into homes undetected and evade capture. What set this predator apart was his precision and the meticulous way he operated. Victims described him as calm and calculating, with a disturbing ability to anticipate their movements. His crimes became so methodical that local law enforcement dubbed him the Night Stalker of Bloomington. The community was gripped by fear, especially women living alone. Police urged residents to lock their doors and windows, but the perpetrator's ability to bypass even these precautions created widespread panic. For years, the attacker eluded capture, leaving behind minimal evidence and no clear leads. Jeff Pelo's carefully constructed facade began to crumble on the night of June 4, 2006. A woman living in Normal called 911 after spotting a man lurking outside her home and peering into her window. She described the man as wearing dark clothing and acting suspiciously. Responding officers arrived quickly and apprehended the man as he attempted to flee the area. That man was Jeff Pelo. Pelo initially claimed that he was off duty and merely out for a late-night drive. However, officers found his story suspicious. He was far from his home, in a quiet residential area, and had no plausible explanation for his presence. Investigators also noted his clothing and demeanor, which matched the descriptions provided by other stalking victims in the area. At the time of his arrest, Pelo was carrying a police-issued flashlight and other items that suggested he had been prepared for surveillance or even a break-in. This encounter marked the beginning of the unraveling of his double life. Detectives began connecting the dots between his actions and the unsolved crimes in the area. They discovered that several of the addresses linked to stalking and break-ins were in close proximity to locations where Pelo had been on patrol as a police officer. This revelation raised serious questions about whether he had used his knowledge and access as an officer to target victims. Pelo kept meticulous notes about his victims, including their schedules, habits, and even the layouts of their homes. Investigators found evidence that he had stalked multiple women for weeks, sometimes months, before attempting a break-in or assault. His behavior showed a level of premeditation and obsession that deeply disturbed investigators. DNA samples collected from several crime scenes were eventually matched to Pelo, confirming his involvement in multiple sexual assaults. These findings were the final piece of the puzzle, solidifying the case against him. Jeff Pelo's trial began in 2008, and it was one of the most high-profile cases in Bloomington's history. Prosecutors painted a damning picture of Pelo as a man who abused his position of power to stalk and assault vulnerable women. They argued that Pelo's knowledge as a law enforcement officer gave him a significant advantage in avoiding detection for years. His meticulous planning and calculated behavior demonstrated that these were not crimes of opportunity but rather the actions of a serial predator. The defense attempted to argue that the evidence against Pelo was circumstantial and that his presence near the victim's home on the night of his arrest was a coincidence. After weeks of testimony and deliberation, the jury found Jeff Pelo guilty of multiple charges, including sexual assault, stalking, and burglary. He was sentenced to 440 years in prison, ensuring that he would spend the rest of his life behind bars. For the victims, the trial provided some measure of justice, but the trauma they endured continues to cast a long shadow. Psychopaths are often skilled at mimicking normal behavior and manipulating those around them, which allows them to blend into society undetected. The case of Jeff Pelo is a stark reminder that monsters do not always fit the stereotypical mold. Sometimes, they hide behind badges and uniforms, exploiting the trust placed in them to commit unspeakable acts. While justice was ultimately served, the scars left by his crimes remain. For law enforcement agencies, it underscores the importance of accountability, transparency, and the need to root out those who might abuse the power entrusted to them.